Crime exists in every society, but very few societies experience crime the way America does. In many parts of the world, crime is something people know exists. In America, crime is something people often feel exists. Constantly. You can live in a safe neighborhood. You can avoid danger. You can go years without witnessing a serious crime. And still, the feeling remains that something is wrong, that things are getting worse. That danger is closer than it used to be. But here's the uncomfortable question. What if that feeling isn't telling the full story? What if crime doesn't just happen in the streets? What if it happens in the mind? Because when researchers compare public fear with actual crime data, something strange appears. In many periods, Americans believed crime was rising, even when crime was stable or declining. This is not a political statement. It's a psychological one. So how does a society become convinced of a reality that numbers don't fully support? The answer isn't simple, and it isn't accidental. It involves stories, repetition, memory, and something deeply human. Our instinct to focus on danger. In this video, we are not here to deny crime, and we are not here to minimize suffering. Instead, we are here to ask a deeper question. Why does crime feel worse in America, even when it isn't? To answer that, we must step away from headlines and step into how perception is built. Because once you understand how fear spreads, you begin to understand why it feels so real. Stay with the story until the end, not because the answers are shocking, but because they quietly explain something millions feel, yet rarely question. The feeling that something is wrong. Every society has crime, but very few societies feel crime the way America does. Ask someone in the US a simple question. Do you think crime is getting worse? Most will say yes confidently. What's interesting is that this belief exists even in places where crime statistics show stability, or even decline. So where does this feeling come from? This is where the story begins. Crime is not just an event. It is also an experience of perception. In America, crime feels closer, louder, and more personal, even when it happens hundreds of miles away. Why? Because Americans don't just live with crime. They live with crime narratives, television screens, phone alerts, social media feeds, all designed to keep attention, not context. A single incident can be replayed thousands of times, analyzed from every angle, and emotionally amplified until it feels like part of daily life. Psychologists call this the availability effect. The more often we see something, the more common we believe it is. And America sees crime constantly. But here's the twist. Seeing crime more often does not mean crime is happening more often. This disconnect between data and emotion is what makes crime feel worse than it actually is. And once fear enters the picture, logic steps aside. This is not accidental. Fear is powerful. Fear captures attention. Fear keeps people watching. News organizations know this. Social platforms amplify it. Algorithms reward it. The result is a society where crime feels ever-present, even when daily life remains largely unchanged. But perception is only the surface. To truly understand why crime feels worse in America, we must look deeper into how stories are told, repeated, and psychologically absorbed. Because what comes next explains why, even intelligent, well-informed people can feel unsafe in statistically safe environments. And that understanding begins with how crime is presented, not committed. The media effect. When stories replace statistics, crime does not spread only through actions. It spreads through stories. In the United States, crime coverage follows a simple rule. Emotion beats proportion. A rare but shocking crime can receive more attention than thousands of ordinary, peaceful days. Why? Because dramatic stories keep audiences engaged. This does not mean journalists are lying. It means the system rewards impact, not balance. A single violent event, replayed endlessly, creates a sense of frequency, even if it is statistically rare. Psychologically, the human brain struggles to separate repetition from reality. When an event appears repeatedly on screens, the mind interprets it as common. This is why people often overestimate risks they constantly hear about, and underestimate risks they don't. In America, crime stories are national. Local incidents become national conversations. This creates a unique effect. People feel personally threatened by crimes that are geographically distant and unrelated to their daily lives. The mind does not calculate distance. It calculates emotion, and emotion spreads faster than facts. Social media intensifies this effect. Algorithms push content that triggers reactions: fear, anger, outrage. Calm explanations rarely go viral, but shocking headlines do. This leads to a distorted mental map of reality, where danger feels everywhere, all the time. Yet when researchers compare perception surveys with actual crime data, a pattern emerges. People consistently believe crime is rising, even during periods when it is not. This gap between belief and reality is not a failure of intelligence. It is a predictable outcome of exposure, and the more emotionally charged the exposure, the stronger the belief. But media is only one piece of the puzzle, because even when people know statistics, the feeling remains. Why? Because the story of crime in America is not just told by media. It is reinforced by psychology, memory, and identity. And that takes us to something even more powerful than headlines: how the human brain remembers danger. The psychology of fear. Why the brain chooses danger. The human brain did not evolve for modern media. It evolved for survival. Thousands of years ago, paying attention to danger meant staying alive. Missing a threat had consequences. Ignoring calm did not. So the brain developed a bias. Threats are remembered more strongly than safety. This is called negativity bias. In modern America, this ancient system is overwhelmed. The brain treats news alerts like survival signals. Each crime story feels like a warning. Even if nothing happens personally, the emotional imprint remains. Over time, these imprints accumulate. The result is chronic alertness, a sense that danger is always nearby. This is why crime feels personal, even when it is abstract. It is not about logic. It is about memory. One shocking crime can outweigh dozens of peaceful experiences in the mind. And once fear becomes habitual, it shapes behavior. People change routines, avoid places, distrust strangers. This reinforces the belief that danger is everywhere, creating a self-confirming loop. But here's the key insight. Feeling unsafe does not always mean being unsafe. In many American cities, crime is concentrated in specific areas and contexts, yet perception spreads it evenly across the mental landscape. This creates a nation where crime feels universal, even when it is not. And when fear becomes cultural, it starts influencing policy, conversation, and identity. But perception alone cannot explain everything, because America does have crime, sometimes severe, sometimes visible. So how does reality fit into this psychological picture? That answer lies in comparison. Comparisons, context, and the illusion of exception. America is often described as uniquely dangerous. But is it? The answer depends on what is being compared and how. The U.S. is a large, diverse country with decentralized reporting. Crime data is transparent, public, and constantly analyzed. Many countries do not report crime with the same openness or frequency. This creates an illusion. America appears worse because America measures more. Additionally, cultural openness around discussing crime amplifies visibility. In some societies, crime is hidden. In America, it is examined publicly. Transparency is mistaken for intensity. Context matters. Urban crime, rural crime, historical crime, all differ. Yet they are often discussed as a single problem. This flattens complexity into fear. When comparisons lack nuance, perception becomes distorted. But the most important comparison is not between countries. It is between what people believe and what data shows. And when those two drift apart, anxiety fills the gap. So why does this gap persist? Because perception feels real, and emotions don't need statistics to survive. Understanding this does not dismiss crime. It explains why it feels overwhelming. And that understanding leads to the final question. If crime looks worse than it is, what should people actually focus on? The reality check. Understanding without fear crime is real. Fear is real. But they are not the same thing. America's relationship with crime is shaped less by frequency and more by visibility, emotion, and psychology. When stories dominate data, perception replaces proportion. This does not mean ignoring crime. It means understanding it accurately. History shows that societies make better decisions when fear is informed, not amplified. The goal is not to minimize crime, but to see it clearly. Because clarity reduces panic, and panic distorts judgment. When people understand how perception works, fear loses its grip. And when fear loses its grip, society gains perspective. The most dangerous thing is not crime itself, it is misunderstanding it. Because misunderstanding shapes reactions, policies, and trust. And that is where real consequences begin. Understanding reality is not comforting. It is empowering, and empowerment is the opposite of fear. Crime is real, its consequences are real, and for those affected, statistics offer little comfort, but perception matters. Because perception shapes behavior, what this story reveals is not that crime should be ignored, but that fear without context becomes its own problem. When danger feels constant, trust erodes. When trust erodes, communities weaken. And when understanding disappears, decisions are driven by emotion rather than clarity. America does not experience crime in isolation. It experiences crime through screens, alerts, and repetition. The human brain was never designed for this level of exposure, so it reacts. The only way it knows how, by staying alert, by remembering threats, by assuming the worst. This does not make people foolish. It makes them human. The challenge is learning to separate what feels true from what is actually happening. Because societies that confuse the two often make choices they later regret. Understanding crime accurately does not reduce compassion. It increases wisdom. It allows fear to be replaced with focus, and panic to be replaced with perspective. The most important lesson is this. Crime becomes most powerful not when it happens, but when it is misunderstood. And understanding has always been humanity's strongest defense. If this video helped you see the issue more clearly, then its purpose was not entertainment. It was awareness. Because the goal is not to feel safer than reality, but to understand reality well enough to respond without fear.